Okay, here we go. Welcome in. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. This is the Week 6 TSF Game Plan Show. My name is Safwan Alvi. As always, I will be your host, and I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime, TSF writer, partner, and friend, Brandon Lampley. And again, we are TriStateFootball.com. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on Twitter and Instagram at TS Football. Again, that's at TS Football. And you can like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. Just type in TriStateFootball.com on both of those channels. And you can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you might get your podcast to our pregame and postgame coaches interviews and all of our Tri-State football content. All right, Brandon, the first half of the season has come and gone. The first 5 weeks are done as we get set for the second half of the season. I can't believe it. Football season always tends to go by very quickly, and we have a lot to discuss, right? We got slowly teams getting into playoff positions. We are slowly, getting in eyesight of maybe some conference winners coming into it as well. Again, we have some big games to go through. We have many ranked matchups. And, we got to start off with some GCL South play, right? Because where else would we start off, right? A top 5 matchup. We are getting in the heart of conference play. Number 5, Elder, taking on number 2, St. Xavier. This game is going to be at Balaban Field. Brandon, there's a lot to get to in this game. St. X coming off that big loss against Moeller, right? One of the biggest games of the year. Again, Elder is the only undefeated team left in the GCL South, right? Believe it or not, because the Moeller Crusaders, for those wondering, they lost to the Mount Carmel team, right? Moeller hasn't lost to a team in the Tri-State, but they did lose to Mount Carmel. But I do want to talk about this Elder versus St. X game, right? Alabama Field. Brandon, tell me what you're seeing in this big top 5 GCL South matchup.
Well, I'm saying a big time matchup, as you said. Two blue collar programs, great coaches going against each other, and great players going against each other as well. We when we think of Elder, we always think of Caden Eastep and how he has grown into his game, and offensively, just a great passer, maybe an even better runner out of the quarterback position. Tommy Becker, also a great running back for them. We look at that Elder offense as some offense that can cause problems for a lot of teams. And we look at Saint Xavier. I think we look at the defense. As we talked about before. Previous weeks. I really like Aiden Reeder, a guy who's been stepping up for the Bombers defensively. We kind of always talk about Kobe Clapper and Braden Riley, but I think Aiden Reeder is a very unique player, a player who really makes a difference. And of course, Daniel Vollmer. And in my best bets this week, I talked about the Saint X offense, kind of being off to a slow start. And I posed the question of what if we took Daniel Vollmer and let him play offense again? What would that do for Saint X on that side of the ball? So maybe something to consider. I don't have any inside information, but that's something I would consider doing to get that offense a jump start. Needless to say, I'm liking Saint X in this game. I'm liking a little more defense. I like the home field advantage, and I'm going to take the Bombers to bounce back from that loss last week.
Yeah, going off of your point on the St. X defense, it was a pretty uncharacteristic defensive performance last week, right? And you can probably attribute a lot of that to Moeller, right, being, the top ranked team. But what really surprised me about that St. X defense last week was they got gashed on the ground, right? 182 rushing yards they gave up to Moeller. They were averaging 5.7 yards a carry, right? Tyler Jocelyn was basically getting anything he wanted whenever he wanted. Cathedral, the Indianapolis Cathedral team that St. X played a couple weeks ago, was the only other team that gained over 100 yards effectively and did anything against St. X, right? And we always say that Indiana Cathedral team is like a GCL South team, right? And Moeller's ability to run the ball on St. X, right? That was, I wouldn't say alarming because again, how good they are, but that is maybe quote unquote, maybe the weak spot, right? Because they do have some young guys in that defensive backfield. Lyons, I think Grant Lyons, he's a sophomore. They got some young guys playing on defense. And going off of your point for St. X, offensively, they're so experienced on defense, mostly for St. X, right? Daniel Vollmer's a senior, Braden Riley's a senior, Kobe Clapper's a senior, right? But offensively, where they're young is the quarterback and the offensive line, right? Jackson Fry is a young quarterback, right? It's his first year starting. They have some first year starters on the offensive line, and it's taking them some time to get going, right? Caden Estep, as you mentioned, he's having such a good year, right? He's only a junior, so this young man is just scratching the surface on what he's capable of doing. Second in the GCL South in passing yards with 863, 398 rushing yards, which actually leads the GCL South, right? Having such an awesome year. And they're an opportunistic defense, right? When I'm alluding to the Elder Panthers here, right? They've won the turnover battle, Brandon. I was just looking up some fun stats. The Springboro game was the only game that they didn't win the turnover battle, right? And even that, they only lost it by one. Every other game, right? So 4 of their 5 games, they won the turnover battle. And 3 of those 5 games, they did not turn the ball over once, right? And when you play with that type of efficiency, right? When the drive is ending in either points or a punt, you give yourself a chance to win every single game, right? Especially playing in the GCL South, right? Elder, they're a team that doesn't beat themselves, right? They're a team that really, they don't turn the ball over. They don't beat themselves. They're not fumbling the ball, and it's going to be hard for them. It's going to be hard for St. X to beat them when you have a team that's so disciplined, and, Coach Ramsey's team, they're very buttoned up.
Yeah, very disciplined, as you said, and that's a great point that you mentioned there with the turnover battle. I just like a tough defense. I think this is one of those older school St. X Elder games, a 17-14, 21-20 type ball game, if that. So I'm going to stick with my pick for now. I like St. X still on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And St. X is going to continue to ride with their defense, right? As Jackson Fry continues to get better, and he will, right? The offensive line, they'll continue to get better, but their calling card is going to continue to be defense. And as the playoffs go on, Brandon, and again, we'll talk about this as the season kind of winds down, that point you made about Daniel Vollmer, I 100% I see it happening, right? He'll be a tight end if they need him to be. He'll be a running back if you need him to be. We saw it last year, right? In the playoffs end of the season, he was a do-it-all. He played quarterback at some points when Herb Street was still there. He played running back. He played tight end. So this is going to be a guy, as the season kind of winds down and gets into the playoffs, he's going to be, kind of doing everything. And when you have a guy like that, you have a chance to win a game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I do want to move on to our next game going into the GMC because, man, we have some things to talk about with this football team. Man, oh, man. All right, a ranked matchup, number 14 Middletown going to Lakota West. And, yes, you are seeing that right, number 17 Lakota West. And, Brandon, it's just a very simple question. What has happened to the Lakota West Firebirds? They have lost 2 consecutive games, 2-3 on the year. The offense is struggling. They lost to Fairfield last week. For those who don't know, they lost to Fairfield 10-7, right? And that's 2 straight losses. They lost to Princeton the week before, 27-10, and they lost to Fairfield last week. 3 losses on the year, under 500. Very uncharacteristic for a Tom Bolden team. Brandon, what is your diagnosis? What is going on with this Lakota West team?
Well, yeah, just seeing a vulnerability in Lakota West, that we haven't seen in several years, really maybe since Tom Bolden, came over. Just not being able to finish drives a lot is what I've been seeing. A couple weeks ago in the Princeton game, pretty much outgained Princeton in every aspect of the game, but weren't able to capitalize with points. And the name of the game is outscoring your opponent at some point. So, and similar last week against Fairfield, 7 points, 10 points. A Lakota West team giving up 10 points, I'm sure they expect to win that ball game. But only being able to come with 7, you're just having those troubles finishing drives. And, with Jackson Smith, he's been okay here, up and down, I guess you could say, as a quarterback, and really throughout his entire career. If you remember, I think he started as the starter last year, maybe game 1 or something like that. Just been an up and down player, and they need that consistency out of him because they have the weapons around him to do great things. When you think of Kenyon Norman out of the backfield, Tyson Davis as a wide receiver who he has built some type of chemistry with. They've connected a lot this year. I think Lakota West just has to focus on finishing drives. I think coach will be happy with where his defense is right now. And when you look at Middletown, Collie Jones, he would be my pick right now for a coach of the year halfway through the season. I don't know if anybody really expected Middletown to be where they are, looking at a possible number one seed in Region Two. This I don't know what happened there. Something froze, but am I back?
Yep, all good.
Yeah.
All good.
Looking like a number one seed there in Reason 2. And, I like JoJo Ward as a quarterback. He's being mentored by Jalen Marshall, the former Middletown great up there. And you can see it in his game as a runner and a passer. They got some great transfers. On the defensive side of the ball, like C.J. Bryant from Hamilton. They got J.D. Singletary, who's another high caliber player on the defensive line. This one is going to come down to it. Middletown, this will definitely be their toughest test so far this year. And, I'm interested to see what happens. I like defense this week. So I think West will come up with something. Maybe the stage is a little too big for Middletown being in this position. I'm still going to roll with West to bounce back and kind of get this thing going. Their schedule softens up here the next couple weeks, so don't be surprised if they get 3 or 4 in a row to end the season.
Yeah, and with Middletown, how good is head coach Collie Jones? I mean, he is such a good head coach. He's a program builder. He's a culture builder, right? He was at Withrow a couple of years ago and took Withrow to the second round of the playoffs. Such a good culture builder. And he was at another CMEX school. Maybe it was Woodward before that, before he went to Withrow. I can't remember off the top of my head, but this is his third destination. And Middletown is just playing with such, toughness, with such grit. And since week 2, right, their outputs on what they're holding their opponents to, right, is 2 points, 9 points, 0 and 0, right? They pitched 2 shutouts in a row. And I get it that the strength of schedule hasn't been, mind-boggling, right? I know they've beaten some teams, they beat Oak Hills, they beat Coleraine, they beat Sycamore, right? Coleraine and Sycamore, I get it. But hey, that can't be said because Lakota West just lost to Fairfield last week, right? And one of the 2 points that Middletown gave up was to Fairfield, right? So I honestly, I don't want to hear any of that, right? Because Lakota West just lost last week. So I don't, outside of Coleraine and Sycamore, those 2 teams are down this year. Middletown's been impressive, right? They are one of the most impressive teams from top to bottom we have, considering where we thought they would be at the beginning of the year. I think we all expected them to win maybe 7 or 8 games. But Brandon, they're on pace to win 8 or 9 games. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get that number 1 seed in, Region 2. Because as you mentioned, they're not in Region 4, right? They're not with St. X. They're not with Moeller and all those guys. So Middletown has a clear shot to maybe get the 1 seed. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win a playoff game or 2.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have the ability and the path, which is important. The path and the competition you may have to run into to get far, maybe a regional championship, even possibly, where then they would probably have to face a Moeller or a St. X there. But you like to hold off on facing those teams to as late as you possibly can. So, very interested in this game because I think everybody just you kind of want to see it. Is Middletown for real or the real deal? And even though Lakota West is maybe lesser than they've been, I think this will still be a great test and one of those that you could pass even if you lose, like we talked about a couple weeks ago. And if they come in there and it's a tight one, that's a pass. If they, get blown out, then you start, oh, okay, maybe they're not as good. So we'll see what happens. I'll take West though.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great game. And just harping on that Middletown defense, right? Braylon Bryant, J.D. Singletary, Jaden Davis, they all have 4+ sacks, right? They have multiple guys that can get after the quarterback, multiple guys that can stop the run. And that's my last point, and then we'll move on to our next game. That Lakota West team, like eventually something's got to give because the same thing happened, as you mentioned, in the Princeton game, where you look at the stat sheet and Lakota West, you think maybe they won by 10 points or 14 points. Same thing happened, right? Against the Fairfield team, right? Lakota West had more total yards. Lakota West actually had less turnovers than Fairfield. And we're looking at, again, I'm looking at these stats right now. They got beat in the time of possession battle, right? It was almost 11 minutes more time of possession, but Lakota West had more penalties. Fairfield had more turnovers. Lakota West had more total yards. So you would look and you're thinking, oh, Lakota West probably won that game, but they didn't, right? So their inability to finish drives, their inability to score points, right? This is something they have to get figured out as we get later on in the season. And again, it's going to be a very good game, and I am excited for it. I do want to move on right back to the GCL South. All right, we got another top 10 matchup. And for those watching, that actually should say number 1 Moeller. So this is number 7 LaSalle taking on number 1 Moeller, another top 10 GCL South matchup. And Brandon, when talking about this conference, yet again, it runs through the Moeller Crusaders as confident and as, dominant as a victory as you could get, taking on the previous number 1 St. Xavier Bombers, 30-13. They ran the ball. Basically, Brandon, any way you want it, the smaller team can beat you, and it's just very, very impressive to see this team so far.
Yeah, and I think like last week, I think the run game will be big again this week. I think when teams play Moeller, they fear the quarterback. They don't want to get beat by Ponatoski, picking them apart, essentially, finding guys down the field, across the field, moving the chain. So I think that box area sometimes is a little light, and guys like Tyler Jocelyn, and Dante Ware, they can have, a field day. And I see something similar to that this week. I just don't think LaSalle has the horses, so to speak, to keep up offensively or defensively. I like Avier Carter at quarterback. They have some great defensive players like Woodridge and Porter. It's just a tough matchup. Sometimes you run into a matchup where it's just a tough matchup, and I think that's the case this week. I would be very shocked if this ends up a LaSalle win. I like Moeller, maybe 3 touchdowns in this.
Okay, so you're predicting a big win. You think Moeller wins big in this game?
Big win, yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's hard. It's going to be an uphill battle, but LaSalle, right, as you mentioned, they are thinking bigger picture here, right? With them playing in Division II, Region 8, how awesome is it that you get to play against 3 other teams that are high-level Division I, Region 4 opponents? So when you go into Division II, you have such a huge advantage schedule-wise, right? So if LaSalle, these are the weeks you kind of got to learn yourself. You're absolutely playing to win the game, right? LaSalle is not here to just try to get better and they're okay with losing, which may happen, which may likely happen. But again, learning about yourself, right? Avier Carter is a young quarterback. But I'll tell you what, this senior Colin Woolridge, one of the most versatile players in the GCL South and maybe Southwest Ohio, Brandon, right? This young man is playing offense. This young man is playing defense. He's the leading tackler, right? I think he's top 10 in the GCL South in receiving yards and rushing yards. There's nothing that this young man can't do. He's, basically like a Daniel Vollmer style player for LaSalle. He's a do-it-all type of guy.
Yeah, I agree. Woolridge having a great season, like you said, on both sides of the ball. His impact, I would say maybe a little more on defense, and I think it has to be this week, a little more on defense to try to get down in there, stop those running backs from getting going. Great season. And Porter as well. He's been a great defensive asset for the Lancers also. But again, I just look at the players that Moeller has, and I just think it's just maybe a little too much this week. But like you said, it's bigger picture. LaSalle's gonna be just fine. Definitely a contender in the Division II playoffs. I agree with you there.
Absolutely. Again, this is a weekend that everybody wants to see the GCL South, right? We got Elder taking on X and then Moeller taking on LaSalle. Again, 2 top 10 matchups there. One more big game I want to talk about is a battle of CMAC schools, right? This is going to be a very fun game. Year in and year out, the Cincinnati Metro Athletic Conference, the 2 most talented teams in the conference, right? You're looking at Taft, the Senators, and you're looking at Withrow, the Tigers. Taft coming in at number 10, Withrow coming in at number 19. This is a really fun matchup. Taft is coming into this game, again, a top 10 team. They're undefeated, right? They haven't lost, and they've pitched 3 shutouts. So, Brandon, tell me about this Taft team and also a little bit about this Withrow team because, man, they've had some dominant wins, and the Senators are rolling right now.
Yeah, Taft, I mean, picking up this year basically where they left off as a state finalist. They just been running through teams, and quarterback Manzana Torbert, I mean, over 1,200 yards passing already, 16 touchdowns. He's that experienced play caller. He can do it throwing the ball. He's got a trio of guys at wide receiver that are just dynamic players, McMullen, Hill, and Holloway. They can all do everything. Very interchangeable. They can beat you deep. They can get you over the middle. They can take little short screen passes and give you yards after the catch. They can do everything. And they also have great defensive players. And JoJo Pouncey, I think he has about 60 tackles. Adam Kirtley, 50 tackles. Taft doing a lot of damage. But Withrow, I'll tell you what, similar to what we just talked about with LaSalle, Withrow showed me a lot last week, and kind of playing that tough game against the Lancers last week, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit about who they are as a team, and Taft maybe like a Middletown hasn't played like the best team so far this year. A lot of blowout victories. I'm interested to see when kind of the playing field is more even, which it will definitely be this week, and a road game over in Hyde Park. For some reason, I like the Tigers to get a home win in this one.
I think that's a good point, right? Taft is as talented as a team as you're going to find in the tri-state area, right? Athlete for athlete, pound for pound, Taft is right there. But the strength of schedule, I think, matters. They played Alter. That was their, closest test. And that it took them to overtime. And remember, that was one of the craziest games of the year because they were losing in that game. Right? If I'm not mistaken, I think it was like 27-7. It was 27-7 going into the fourth quarter. Taft was losing, and they make this miracle comeback, right? Which again, Taft is capable of with all of the talent, right? So kudos to them. But that was the main test because Alter year in and year out up there in Dayton is a very talented team. But I agree, this is going to be the hardest test they face. And I believe in Taft, but again, this is going to be close, and they're going to be able to learn a lot about themselves, Coach Williams and the Senators.
Yeah, like I said, playing field will be the most even it's been for Taft this year. When you talk about athletes, you talk about speed. I mean, it's gonna be so much speed on the field. It's gonna be crazy. So it really just comes down to who will execute better at that point. When you don't have that advantage that's so big, it comes down to who's going to execute better, and I think Withrow will this week.
Yeah, one of the most exciting games of the year, I think, is with Taft and Withrow. And for those of you who haven't been down to Withrow, it's a really fun place to watch a game. So I highly recommend going down to that game, especially in a game with this magnitude. Go down to Withrow, watch a game. It's a great stadium. All right, Brandon, before we get out of here, we got to run through some rapid fire picks, right? We got to talk about a little bit more GMC, talk a little Eastern Indiana too. Going into Ohio with some rapid fire picks. Let me know who you think wins and why. Top 15 matchup, number 5 Princeton. They are rocking and rolling right now after another big win against Lakota East last week. They are taking on number 13 Mason. Who do you got?
I like Princeton. I went against them last week. I thought they would have a fall off. They proved me very, very, very wrong, and I think they're on a good pace. Mason, they can be tricky. They'll try to slow the game down. D'Angelo Birch, playing against his old team, might be a little more hyped than usual and have a great performance. But I like Princeton.
Yeah, I think this game might be a little bit closer than people think. I like Mason. I think they're a tough, gritty team. But Princeton is rocking and rolling right now. Like, as I mentioned, with the wins over Lakota West, their confidence is probably at an all-time high right now. I love what Coach Barker's doing. I agree. I think Princeton wins this game. How about a little ECC matchup, right? Number 8 Kings taking on number 20 Lebanon. We know Kings took a tough loss to Anderson last week. And again, Anderson is just a gauntlet in itself. So I'm not going to, throw away Kings by any stretch of the imagination. They're taking on Lebanon. Who do you got this week?
Ooh, this is a tough one for me. Um, I'm gonna go with the Warriors at home. Uh, I like Michael Fowler. They had a slow start last week against Little Miami and picked it up. This could be one of those 14-10 games. It could also be one of those 45 to 42 games. It just kind of depends of what happens here. Um, I'm gonna go out on a limb. I like Lebanon in this.
Yeah, this game going to be one of the craziest games of the week, I think, right? Either way, whether it's a high scoring game, whether it's a low scoring game, my gut is something is going to happen in this game that's going to make the highlight reels, right? For better or for worse for one of the teams. I got Kings in this game. I love Coach Alex Garvin. I think, he is the superior coach in this game, but I love Lebanon. I love what they're doing. I think they're a dangerous team and they're going to be a thorn in sides come playoff time. I do think Kings wins this game, but this is going to be a sneaky fun game this week. And then one more GMC game, number 16 Fairfield, feeling good about themselves, pulling maybe the upset of the year so far, right? It's in the conversation, taking down Lakota West 10-7, so they're feeling good. And then they're playing a Lakota East team who is trying to bounce back after they were roughed up pretty bad by Princeton last week. So again, top 20 matchup. Who you got? Fairfield versus Lakota East.
I'm gonna go Lakota East in this one. I'm not. How can I say this? I don't believe in the Fairfield yet. I don't know what that was last week, but their whole resume tells me I shouldn't believe in them yet. So I like Lakota East.
Yeah,
Ryder Hooks. I like Ryder Hooks.
I believe in the momentum Fairfield has. With that being said, I agree with you to the point where I'm not ready to give my prediction for them. Right? I need to see it one more week. If they pull this upset, which again I think they're capable of, right? Because John Kitna's crew is coming off of a tough loss to Princeton. If Fairfield carries this momentum, there's no reason they can't go in and win at Lakota East. But I'm going to have to see it a little bit more, right? I love what Fairfield did. Coach Roden, I think, is doing an awesome job over there. But I do think Lakota East wins this game. Another game that could be a sneaky fun one. How about a little Eastern Indiana, Brandon, before we get out of here? South Dearborn taking on number 21 East Central, right? Two teams that are not too far away from each other. East Central coming in at number 21. They've lost a couple games. Maybe not looking as dominant as they once been, but who you got? South Dearborn versus East Central.
I like East Central. I think they dominate that side of town most of the time,
Yep.
year after year. I'm not sure the last time South Dearborn has beat them. I would say probably 5+ years. I'm going to go with East Central.
Yeah, East Central. I think this is the time where East Central starts to kind of get it rolling. If I'm not mistaken, I think they did lose Ryan Mingus, their leading rusher. So I think he is going to be out for a little bit of time. But if there's anybody who's equipped to handle that, I think it's head coach Jake Miners, right? This is a state champion. This guy has coached excellent running backs before, right? We've seen some excellent players come out of that program. So I do think East Central wins, and I think we should keep an eye on them. I think they're going to start hitting their stride. And Brent, I think they're going to become another playoff threat, right? Miners has been there, done that. I could see them making another deep playoff run.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Anytime they step on the field, they're capable of winning and advancing definitely in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And just some games I want to mention. We don't got to make picks with these because a lot of these teams are outside of our tri-state area. In terms of Northern Kentucky, we have number 6 Highlands taking on Harrison County, Tate's Creek taking on number 11 Ryle, and then we have number 12 Covington Catholic taking on Central Catholic as well. So be sure to tune in to TriStateFootball.com. Just go to /scores. That's where the Underground Sports Shop scoreboard is. And you can follow along all of the scores in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, and Indiana. All right, that is going to do it for us. Again, we got big-time GCL South matchups, some big CMAC action, a lot of fun things going on. It's the second half of the season. And Brandon, anything you want to say as we get ready for the second half, anything you're looking for, just anything on your mind as second half of the season kicks off in just over 48 hours?
Yeah, my team to watch this week and going forward, the GCL Co-Ed, the McNicholas Rockets, Mike Orlando. They got a sneaky great team, a lot of athletes that can do different things. They got Carroll this week, and I'm interested to see what they do down the back half of the season. And that Week 10 matchup with the Baden Rams, I'm curious how that one's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a lot to look forward to, right? We're going to really start figuring out some playoff positions in the next couple of weeks, right? We're going to see who the contenders are from the pretenders. Again, a lot to look forward to. So we want to thank everyone for listening and watching. Again, we appreciate all the support that we get here at Tri-State Football. Brandon and I will be right back here next week talking week 7. Right, we'll talk a little bit about what happened on Friday as well, and then we'll have some more games to get into. So again, we appreciate everyone listening. For Safwan, Alvi, and Brandon Lampley, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next week on the TSF Game Plan Show.